Hey there everyone, Lord Frigid here, and this week I've got a bit of bad news and a bit of good news. The bad news is that my Astra season was so bleh that I don't actually have enough clips to put together a full-on Aether Raids Offense video. Yeah, it was that bad. Actually, I guess I technically have one and then another one where a unit dies, but I wasn't really feeling it. Fortunately, this week I have the perfect get out of jail free card because I completely revamped my anima defense team. Now, as you probably know, the most recent legendary banner, at least at the time of this recording, was Celica's. Thracier was also on it, so I decided I'm going to pull for another copy of Thracier and run a anima defense team with 2 of them and a supporting cast of 4 other units. And as you'll see, as we go through my defense replays for the week, I was able to build it and tweak it, evolve it over the course of the week, and hopefully it will be a little interesting or informative as to the process of building a defense map and updating it as you see enemies try their hands at taking it on. So here we have the first map, and you can see my my team's humble beginnings. I'm going for a space oppression, make it hard to approach the enemies by just having enemies that you don't really want to approach, that being notably Seliph, Roy, and both Thraciers. Roy has lunge, so he can lunge an enemy into Thraciers' range. Unfortunately, in this case, he attacks Ephraim and he takes in 72 immediately, and then poor Lilina can't actually finish the job. So that was a wonderful start right there. But that's the goal of this map, to basically make it hard to approach, and then when you do approach, you are ideally fighting a bunch of terrifying mages and bad things will happen to you. Didn't quite happen in this case. So at this point I decided, okay, you know what, I actually don't really like the idea that Brave Roy here is backed up by, his backup damage is a second red if he fails to get the lunge off. Fortunately for my team here, I managed to get Seliph down into their back line, which will enable me to secure a KO eventually. Well, obviously, as evidenced by the fact that I had 1 KO on this battle. Unfortunately, though, Seliph actually misses that KO on Naga by 1 HP, and then again misses the KO on Faye by also 1 HP, so that kind of sucked. But it was alright. And that's basically brings this map to a close because Ninian can do absolutely nothing to Faye. So that was interesting. And at this stage I switched out Lilina for Ophelia and had so I could have a blue backing up Roy. It's better. So this person is going to go ahead and use it's also a pretty mixed tanking team now that I look at it again, with the idea being that you can use either Nino or Altina depending on what the situation calls for. So here they go ahead and they do just take a couple turns to set up, and after that they're going to end up just sticking Altina right in range of Roy. So I'm gonna pause for a moment while that gets into place. And now Roy does attack. He doesn't die to Altina because Blazing Durandal boosts his defenses so much and prevents Altina from charging Twin Blades. Unfortunately, he doesn't take out Altina, so she is able to vantage tank Thracier. Ophelia does manage to come in and take out Renea. I honestly I think it would have been better if she'd taken out Altina instead, but oh well. And now, at least there's still Seliph could theoretically manage to take her out. But it's unlikely. She's in a pretty safe spot right now. She can retreat pretty easily, and that is what she ends up doing, with Naga baiting out Seliph and Ninian, or catching the attention of Seliph and Ninian, while Nino catches the attention of Thracier, preventing her from going another direction, although I'm not sure she would have, to be perfectly honest. So unfortunately, Thracier was unable to take out Nino, and this is pretty much a wrap at this stage. There's not a whole lot that my team can do, especially against a full HP Ivel, who now has her massive Ignis charged up. I think she's rocking something like 60 defense. So that's a pretty clean finisher to this person's attempt at beating my map. At this stage, I decided, okay, you know what? I'm clearly not oppressing enough space here, and I swapped out Seliph for Reinhardt. I inverted the positioning, putting Roy on the left instead, and I have Reinhardt and Thracier on the right with overlapping threat ranges. I changed the map terrain to Spring Breeze, which allows me to add extra defensive structures very close to the enemy, and immediately what I saw is that was a very useful thing to do. As you can tell, that tactics room is really bothering this George and the Delthea, to the point where they actually engage my team by breaking the tactics room with George here, and then repositioning him out with Naga. Now, unfortunately for this fellow, Roy actually survives Naga with a mere 3 HP. Thracier obviously completely destroys her, and Roy's Gale Force activation and low HP allow him to become a Wings of Mercy beacon for all kinds of terrible shenanigans. And as you can probably imagine, this is now not a very winnable matchup at all, with not only Ophelia, Ninian, and Roy in your face, but there's 2 Thraciers and a Reinhardt waiting in the wings. So at this stage, after Ninian takes out Delthea, and Thraciers and Reinhardt closing in, this person chose to surrender. Not a terribly unreasonable decision, if I'm being honest. So with that out of the way, I decided I was pretty satisfied with how the team performed then, and I left the composition the same. And I decided to go for some extra style points by giving Rooker Remnant accessories to the lot of them. So this time we have a Sothis tanking setup, which it works pretty well. Her special fighter prevents Thracier from activating her Luna, and this is kind of when I started thinking, okay, maybe I should drop an infantry pulse on, say, Ophelia, because Thracier will actually boost Ophelia's HP to the point where she herself benefits from infantry pulse. Luckily, Sothis doesn't actually outright kill Thracier, although she does completely destroy Reinhardt, but the damage is done. The Wings of Mercy shenanigans have come into play, and at this stage they choose to surrender as well, probably fearing Ophelia destroying Altina, or perhaps maybe even Roy taking out Sothis. So I was alright with that. I didn't really like how Reinhardt got completely obliterated, but I was still willing to give him another chance. And here we have a Brave Ike tank set up, and this is where I decided, okay, maybe Reinhardt isn't such a good idea, because very obviously this person's going to be putting Brave Ike over on the right-hand side. Well, I guess it's not super obvious, but it's far more likely, in my opinion. I wouldn't really want to consider sticking him in front of Roy, Lunge Roy with a Thracier backup. So predictably, both Thracier and Reinhardt get defeated by Ike, and at this stage Roy comes over, and it's cool, he got all the way over there, but he doesn't really do much of anything, and in fact what he does, the only thing he really accomplishes is lunging himself in front of Naga, and that's not going to end well for him at all. But what saved this map for my defense team was a couple of weird placement decisions here. Altina is debuffed, so Killing Intent is active, and Thracier manages to take her out. And then they left Ike, Lucina, and Alphonse over there, allowing Ophelia to take him out. Now, theoretically, they could have taken the victory here, just using Ike and Lucina, but they opted to surrender, cut their losses. At that stage, I was like, alright, no more Reinhardt. I'm switching him out for Lilina. And now this positioning is a little bit odd at first glance, because now you don't have any more overlapping threat range, any immediate overlapping threat range on the right. I gave Roy a positioning assist so that Lilina would move first. I later determined that this was actually unnecessary. But the idea is that Lilina can get over there after a refresh. The interesting thing is, if Roy were to move over and get the refresh himself, which is what I was trying to prevent with the reposition, it wouldn't actually impact me too much, I don't think, as long as Roy survives attacking whatever the enemy stuck in the range, because he has lunge, and you see basically the same situation as you did with Roy and Thracier. on my first iteration of the map went with them on the right side, where he lunges the enemy into Lilina's range, and then Lilina is still perfectly able to attack. So I forgot about that for some reason, and I gave Roy reposition, and as a result, he gets Ninian out of there, and Ophelia warps in immediately right into Hector's face, and as you can imagine, that things do not go well for her from there. Fortunately, as it is not an odd turn, Hector does not have odd follow-up active, and Ninian is able to take him out, but that is all I really get out of this map. Actually, 2 kills isn't too bad at all. A quick reposition to get Kronya out of the way, and Ninian now is forced to take on Naga, and she loses that exchange quite badly. So I was actually pretty satisfied. I did change out the reposition on Roy into no assist, just because I remembered, oh wait, he has lunge, duh. But beyond that, I kept the team the same. Here we have another Brave Ike setup, but this person was a little bit different in that they actually opted to stick Brave Ike on the left side. And this is something I didn't really envision ever happening, just because Roy, I mean, I guess he doesn't kill Brave Ike, but he doesn't really... Brave Ike doesn't really do much of anything to him either. And so I was able to get a kill straight off the bat from Altina. Unfortunately, Ninian sees that she can deal at least 5 damage to Ike without all of his nasty Irvin mitigation, and so she goes for an attack instead of a refresh, and Irvin just destroys her damage completely. Ophelia does go down to repeated attacks from Ike, but Ike is going to go down himself from attacks out of Lilina and my right-hand side Thesir, fortunately for me. And it is here at this stage that he decided to go for a bit of a risk play. Actually, I'm not really sure how much of a risk it is, really. His Kemp has drag back, so he takes out both Thesirs with 1-shots. And then the Naga has Wings of Mercy, and he ends up right near that bolt trap, and he decides things can't get any worse for me if this bolt trap is real, so I'm just going to attack, and he got lucky on that choice. So overall, I was still pretty satisfied with how the team was doing, so I let it stand. And this time around, we have the team focused on Altina, using Altina to vantage tank stuff, which, I mean, it can work, but this placement here is a little odd. I also did actually end up giving Ophelia infantry pulse before this match took place. Unfortunately for poor Roy, he got trapped in between 2 units and 2 impassable objects. Fortunately, Ophelia is able to get a KO by using her Hardy Bearing to prevent Altina from getting her vantage off. And Thesir here is going to completely obliterate Alphonse. And at this stage, there's really nothing they can do. Naga actually does take out Ophelia with distant counter. However, this team, as it stands, has absolutely no answer to Thesir. Never mind the Lilina waiting behind her. So they go ahead and surrender this one as well. So that brings us to today's first encounter. This one's got Kronya as the team's technically it's not Vantage, it's Athame or Athame or however the heck you're supposed to pronounce that. I prefer Athame, so I'm just going to go with that. So it basically is focused around her, and that's totally fine, but the way they initiate this map strikes me as a little odd. I don't know if maybe they just figured my damage from Hector is going to keep Kronya alive or what, but they just dealt the damage and dropped her right in there. Very fortunate that the trap was not real, but unfortunate in that both Ophelia and my right-hand Thesir don't have Kronya does not have Athame active on them because Thesir is full HP and Ophelia has Hardy Bearing. Then on top of that all, Roy goes over to the left, which means he does not overextend himself horribly, and my mages go over to Roy goes over to the right, and my mages go over to the left, towards Naga, who does not want to be anywhere near them. Lilina is also able to take out Jafar. Unfortunately, my other Thesir does fall to Hector. And here's another bit of an odd choice of placement on the duo skill. I would think it would be preferable to use Smite and activate it to affect Roy and Ninian, but I guess it wouldn't really have affected Altina's ability to fight Roy. So Lilina goes on and takes out dear old dad, and after a Gale Force lunge and attack from Ninian, Ophelia is able to warp in and finish the job. Now, I did end up getting 2 more replays overnight, so I'm just going to go ahead and edit those in here real quick. This team is packing a fully merged Idun, Naga, and Altina with a Fina and a bonus unit Marth. The Idun actually caused some pretty serious trouble at the very start of the battle, because she was so bulky that she took 0 damage from Roy, and that really sucked. Because now she negates her penalties during combat, which means that Thraseer's killing intent is not active, so she doesn't actually get to attack a second time before Idun counterattacks her, and she dies to that counterattack. Fortunately, Ophelia is actually able to secure a KO on Altina, because Altina is not running Twin Blades. She's running Gale Force, which it's respectable, it's interesting. It's certainly not something you see every day. But now that Idun is below full HP, the other Thraseer is able to secure the KO on her by activating Luna. And at this stage, this person's in quite a bit of trouble because Marth cannot move 2 spaces. I'm actually not even sure if he even had armored boots. And Fina and Naga are not well equipped at all to deal with Thraseer. So nothing he can do will save Naga here, so he chooses to move her closer in an attempt to get Thraseer refreshed, and then she will advance closer to Marth, which will make it easier to actually win this battle with just the 1 unit. Obviously, if Thraseer doesn't get refreshed and was over on the left, he wouldn't have had enough time to seal this deal. But now, with the power of his duo skill, he's able to get his special charged up and takes the quote-unquote victory. And our final match up here, we've got an interesting, also Gale Force style team using Legendary Leif and the duo Ephraim. I forget what his title is exactly. Actually, is title the word? I think Heroes uses the official terminology of moniker, but I'm not 100% certain. So a couple turns of setup here allows Legendary Leif to safely attack Roy without even thinking about testing the bolt trap. And I guess I'll go ahead and pause the commentary for a little bit while we wait for this to catch up to what I've just said. So interestingly enough, I was expecting him to use the Ephraim's duo skill to get Inigo up to Leif, but instead he just used reposition, leaving Inigo exposed to Thraseer, and Inigo does not live that at all. Unfortunately, that's all the team is able to pick up off of that, as Ophelia is inhibited by the tactics room and can't move the full 2 spaces, which would have allowed her to quite possibly attack Legendary Leif. Leif activates his Gale Force, takes out both Ophelia and 1 Thraseer, and Ephraim is able to one-shot the other Thraseer. He, fortunately for my team, he trips the heavy trap, which prevents Naga from taking out Lilina, and in turn, Lilina is able to take out both Naga and Altina. I was actually surprised she was able to take out Altina. That defense and HP boost from Thraseer is absolutely enormous, I gotta say. And then here, he decides to go ahead and take out my poor healing tower so he can get Legendary Leif to finish off Minion with 2 attacks. I'm not actually sure why he didn't just attack with Ephraim. So that is it for the replays. I hope you all found it interesting and or informative to see how my defense map kind of evolved over the course of the season, how I adjusted to what I saw on the defense replays. and it ended up with a map that was, I think, is reasonably effective. So hopefully next week I will have a much more pleasant Aether Raids Offense experience, and thus be able to put out an Aether Raids Offense video for you all. Regardless, I thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go change around my trap placements. I don't want to make it too easy on any of you who can counter my map after viewing this video.